Hello and welcome to a slightly different episode of Accessibility. You might notice I'm on camera, not with a script in front of me, and there's someone else here because we're talking about an accessibility topic today with a special guest. We'll get to who they are in just a moment, but at the time that this is being published, I think we're publishing this about a week before the Nintendo Switch 2 is being released, and there's been some cool, interesting on paper updates about the Switch 2 accessibility wise in recent weeks, many of which have pertained to, in theory, increased accessibility for various kinds of blind players, including text to speech narration for user interface elements on the Switch 2. That sounds great. Surely that means that the Switch 2 is going to be accessible for blind gamers. And that's definitely not a setup for me introducing my guest today. Who have I joined by today?
Hello, thank you for having me here. I am SightlessKombat, SightlessKombat or SK, any of those three are fine. I am Accessible Gaming Officer for RNIB, that is Royal National Institute of Blind People, but I am also award-winning multi-credited accessibility consultant, and the key thing, a gamer without sight, having never had any sight whatsoever. So, yeah, hi, thank you so
Hi.
much for the invite.
I hope you enjoyed my definitely not at all leading us anywhere intro today. I'm sure that you're going to tell me, yes, the Switch 2 seems like it's going to be perfectly accessible for you in every way, and I've certainly not queued you up to have a contrasting opinion today.
Yeah, you've certainly not queued me up in any possible way. No, the Switch 2. So let's be completely clear. So the Switch 2 having a screen reader, as it's called by the sort of marketing and press releases and things, the Switch 2 having this accessible spoken interface is a arguably huge step in the right direction.
Yeah.
Because historically, though people have been sort of using various Nintendo consoles over the years, it's been by memorization, through capture cards, through all sorts of other things as well. But having it be natively accessible is good.
Yeah.
Granted, it is a good start. It is
There is
surprising
nothing.
it's taken.
Yeah, there's nothing inherently bad about them having introduced this.
Not at all. No, it's in fact a very good thing to see it be done, even though it is very much, it could be said, long overdue, which is completely fair given, consoles have been doing screen readers now for 5 years. And the Switch 2 has apparently been in development since 2019, I think I saw recently.
Yeah.
So they're keeping up with the times in that respect, as in, it started development at the right time for it to be added in, kind of thing. It could be said. But is a screen reader that just reads the home, the settings, home and settings menus, is that going to be enough? Probably not, for any number of reasons. The first of which is that, of course, there are menus other than home and settings.
Yeah, because
well, not menus, but like interfaces, I guess. Not just menus, but
because talking about the things that it's doing well in theory, you can look at the way that this setting is offered, and it's like, okay, it's offering speed control, so you can increase the speed at which the automated voice is being done. You've got choices for different voices that the text to speech can be using. But as you say, it quickly starts to fall apart when you realize, this isn't even, from what we can tell, fully supported across all of the system level elements. Even before we get talking about loading into games, is this going to work, for example, in the eShop? Is this going to work, for example, in, places that aren't the most basic elements of exploring the system?
Well, there's even a bigger question that I thought of before when we were preparing for this interview, which is essentially, in terms of preparing for this episode, I was thinking, what if I were to buy one of these? Full disclosure, as of the time of me recording this, I haven't actually pre-ordered one. But, if I were to, the big question is, would I be able to set it up myself?
Yeah.
Because, as much as this might work on the home screen and the settings, that isn't the first time setup process.
Yeah.
You get a Switch, you plug it in, you charge it, you have to, I don't know, add Wi-Fi, do all these other things. So,
And to be fair,
will it work on that? We don't know.
we don't know at the moment. And like I will say, the industry as a whole is thankfully starting to slowly but steadily get to the realization of, oh, if we're going to offer text to speech support in menus, we should have it on by default at the start, and the first question you're asked should be, do you want to keep it on or turn it off?
Yeah, exactly. It's good to see that being slowly but surely adopted and integrated. Yeah.
But yeah, whether Nintendo will have, because like it's great to see that they've thought about this and it's there in an accessibility menu. But as you point out, do I? Nintendo's been doing some positive like steps forward recently, but I don't know if that's enough that I trust them to be that on the ball to have text to speech on as default for all users as part of initial setup. That feels further than I'm ready to trust Nintendo is at.
Yeah, I can sort of see what you mean. The good thing and frustrating thing, as was said, by other people around the time that they revealed the screen reader functionality, is the fact that the good thing is they've acknowledged that this won't work in all the menus. It kind of says on the description, like when you actually look at the demo video they showed, it says along the lines of, not all screens are going to be supported, kind of thing. Now that's fine. I appreciate the transparency, but it would be better and arguably more, be easier to work with if you knew that at least the game, like all of the interface was going to work. So your store, your eShop, your friends list, all of that. So because the Xbox has that, the PS5 has that, even though there's a few quirks on that latter one.
Because because there's not a lot of like, even looking at like Switch One software, because we know that will run on Switch too. Like I was thinking through the process of like, if you wanted to download, say, off the top of my head, Brock the Investigator is a game with support for being able to play as a sightless player. With the Switch 2, would you be able to boot it up without sighted assistance, get text-to-speech set up, navigate to the eShop to go through the purchase process to, say, buy a copy of Brock the Investigator, navigate to it on the home screen to boot it up, to then start a game that has that support in-game? And, like, that's a really important, like, setup flow before we even talk about Nintendo, like, integrating this into their games themselves.
Yeah, no, exactly. Like, the question is that going to happen? The answer is, we don't know yet. Yeah. Because, as I say, we don't know if it's integrated into the boot flow or not when you first even purchase the console, or if it isn't, then how much assistance you'd need to get it up and running. Is there a shortcut to enable it? There's all these fun questions that haven't yet been answered. And as you say, that's even before we've got into the integration of new accessibility things into Nintendo games themselves, the actual exclusives, because there's lots of people saying, why should I buy insert console here when I can just get the game on PC? Now, there's been conversations around that relatively recently with stuff like God of War Ragnarok, with Spider-Man 2, with Last of Us, of course, all coming to PC. The fun thing we've seen with that, well, fun is the loose term, I guess, depending on your way of looking at it. The interesting thing that we've seen is, however, that various PC ports, for lack of a better word, break things when it comes to accessibility. So God of War Ragnarok, in full disclosure, I'm not trying to throw shade at all, but as an example, God of War Ragnarok, you go in, you play a bunch, it's fine, and then one of the puzzles decides to just break because the navigation doesn't lead you where it should do. And by break, I mean it doesn't use the same set of instructions that you could follow in a guide that I've co-written with a couple of other fantastic people who were willing to work with me on the project. Now, that's not just limited to that one puzzle. There's other instances later.
Yeah.
And Spider-Man 2 has strange accessibility problems in the sense that the screen reader, like the narration is there, but it's not complete in terms of narrating PC-specific options. Now, the question is, is there a reason to buy, the reasoning then is you buy the consoles for the exclusives because they work as optimally as possible. At least that's the theory.
Yeah.
Now, with the Switch 2, having games that are on PC or other platforms that are guaranteed, well, almost guaranteed to be playable on those other platforms, depending on what one you're looking at. So, like Brock the Investigator, you can play it on PC, you can play it on console, for instance. Stuff like that. With the Switch 2, the reason you're going to really want to buy a Switch 2 is the exclusives
Yeah.
in that case, because let's say you've already got all the other stuff you want to play on PC. Now, if that's the case, then we're looking at elements like, other games that Nintendo puts together going to support this, screen reader functionality. My speculation is, well, other than of course we'll see. I, I am curious to see what happens with that. Given we've seen Zelda, the unusual way of doing navigation assistant in that via the specialist app, I guess is the best way to term it.
For anyone who's not aware of this, these Switch 2 specific versions of Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, you can use a smartphone app to set up essentially GPS navigation to have...
Yes.
It'll sync up with your copy of the game on Switch 2 and give you, like, continue heading north, the objective is now above you, kind of directions, which is a strange way of doing it rather than implementing it in-game itself.
Yeah. Honestly, my biggest sort of question, concern, issue, frustration, whatever you want to look at it as, my biggest point of contention with that was the fact that, it's a great idea in principle, and if it was more refined, then amazing. But with the current setup, you have no idea where north is. So if it says continue heading north, it's like, where is north?
Yeah, like it's not
where
even
is any direction?
It's not even saying like continue heading forward, turn 90 degrees right. Like those are instructions you could use based on audio to orient yourself.
Yeah, or even just if it said turn 90 degrees to your right, and then it sort of realized you turned 90 degrees, and then it said now head forward.
Or something like clicking the left stick and that orients you north, so that now when it tells you east, you know the relative direction.
You could sort of kind of guess, brute force your way through it.
Yeah.
Like, it wouldn't be ideal, but you would need a greater degree of actual native implementation to make that work, because we've seen it used, but what I don't think we've really seen is how well does this work in real time in a user, like an end user situation where, let's say I'm playing this, does it take 2 seconds to tell me to head north?
So, there was a brief example shown during the Nintendo Treehouse gameplay just after the Switch 2 Direct, and it seemed like there was maybe a little less than a second of delay on the game updating your movement. So, like, it's close enough, it's probably, like, it's close enough to real time, but, like, there's definitely going to be a little bit of lag in it, and that's going to be a bit of an issue.
And I think half of that is because they're doing it through like a phone app
rather than just natively in game.
Like if you've got this setup, this sort of tech stack, as it were, why not just put it as a system that you can then just plug into games?
If for no other reason, it's frustrating in that someday Nintendo's servers are going to go down and this app isn't going to work with the game. Put it in the game; it'll be there forever, and it gets around these implementation problems. But yeah, one thing about, like, whether Nintendo this generation might start making some of their games be more playable for sightless players, I'm not going to say I'm hopeful, but what I will say is, if there was a generation where I won't feel bad kind of badgering Nintendo about it, it's this one. Because, like, there's two things that I think have opened Nintendo up to go, they should expect to be asked this question now, and it is putting screen reader support in their system level menus, and the fact that they've joined the Accessible Games Initiative, which, for anyone who's unaware, is a big group of lots of different publishers who've come together to agree on accessible store tag descriptions and meanings, and one of those is playable without sighted assistance. So Nintendo can no longer deny that they know that playable without sighted assistance is a thing that there is accessibility demand for in games, and they're trying to make their system-level navigation playable for sightless players, those come together to go, you know that this is a thing you could be doing. You can't feign
Hmm.
a lack of knowledge of the topic.
Well, I mean,
We can
if you
bug
go
you
back
about
even,
it.
I was going to say, if you even go further back, they sent a letter to a Rhythm Heaven fan
Yeah.
many years ago in Braille.
Mm.
So if you want to be really pedantic, you could say they've known for a long time.
Yeah.
But by the same token, of course, technology, there's all sorts of reasons why it may not have
Yeah.
happened yet. I'm not going to try and go into all of that. There's all sorts of reasons, though, why it might not have happened
Yeah.
until now. The point is, it is happening now. There is a situation where we could see accessible Nintendo games for gamers without sight like myself. And if that happens, you won't see me for a while in the best way possible, because I will probably be either, whether I'm streaming it on Twitch or YouTube or writing reviews or doing coverage or whatever, if I can play a game like those ones and sink hundreds, if not thousands of hours into it, I will do so if I enjoy the games. If it's
Yeah.
my genre, let's say, I don't know, Nintendo released some kind of Souls-like thing with like action combat gameplay or whatever, I will be in there practicing and just going for it, because I enjoy that. If you give me a platformer that I can play, I will do that, because
Yeah.
not just because I review games to disseminate information, or I play games to then get that information to other people as well. So if people say, "How accessible is this new thing?" I'm like, "It's not," or "It is," or "Kind of,"
Yeah.
whatever it happens to be. If Nintendo started releasing fully accessible games, or even games that had a greater degree of agency, which
Yeah.
I think would be the first stage. So let's say, I know playing with sighted assistance is a luxury. I totally get that.
Mm.
Not many people have that. I am fortunate that I do, and there are ways to make it work.
Yeah.
If I had to use less sighted assistance, that's always a step in the right direction, and then it's a
Exactly.
matter of getting it down to no assistance needed. But if, let's say, the next Zelda or the next Mario or whatever it is fully accessible,
Mm.
by a stroke of genius, I will gladly say, go and buy this game, or at the very least, keep your eye on the Switch too, because
Yeah.
it Nintendo has been like a sort of locked away,
Mm.
a thing that I've been sort of excluded access to, just because I don't
Yeah.
have, for various technological reasons, and because it can get really complicated. There are people who use Switches who have no sight. I get
Yeah.
that. I have a Switch. I've hardly used it, but when
Mm.
I have, it's been with sighted people, because family-friendly games are kind
Yeah.
of the whole thing, and playing alongside other sighted people is a great laugh, especially when you can beat them at table tennis. Um, so yeah, there's all sorts of fun, interesting things for the future. I would say the way I look at it is, I'm cautiously optimistic,
Mm.
as in, I'm not expecting a ton of accessible games to just fly off the shelves,
Yeah.
but by the same token, well, partly because game dev takes time, partly because
Mm.
these things have taken a while to happen anyway. But I am quietly confident that Nintendo are aware there is demand. They
Yeah.
understand the need for it, even if they're not sure how to make it happen. Incidentally, if they want to make it happen, working with accessibility consultants is always a good start, and organizations
Mm-hmm.
like RNIB, the UK leading sightless charity. So,
Yeah.
there's so many avenues to look at here with this, and I think we'll be discussing
Yeah.
this more in the future.
It's it's one of those things where, like, I've been skeptical of Nintendo when it comes to accessibility for a while. I think that's fair. They've
Hmm.
when we look at the state of where standardization in the industry overall has been the last like 5 years, Nintendo has been noticeably out of step with a lot of where a lot
Hmm.
of other publishers have been starting to get to. But I do think there are like little signs around the Switch 2's launch that have me going, if I was gonna feel optimistic, this is the time to do it.
Yes.
And like, here's one of the, like, in the last 24 hours before recording this, we recorded this in early May. There was an update that it's gonna seem really inconsequential until I explain the specifics, but on Nintendo of Japan's website specifically, and this hasn't yet been updated in English language territories, they started sharing screenshots of how their voice chat, speech to text, and text to speech are going to work. If you're in voice chat with other people, and for example you're deaf, you can get an on-screen automated transcript of what's being said in voice. And the fact that Nintendo of Japan were the first ones to share images of this was weirdly positive to me, because a lot
Yeah.
of the progress we've seen from Nintendo over the years has largely been like led by Nintendo of America, be it things like involvement in the Accessible Games Initiative, the NES hands-free controller back in the day. This is something that like came out of Nintendo Japan first, and that tells me Nintendo of Japan is being a part of driving forward what they're showcasing accessibility wise. Like, that feels very good. The fact that they showed off an accessibility page with a lot of their accessibility settings on the same day as their big console reveal,
Yes.
and
That
that
was great to see.
they
I remember. Yeah.
yeah, and that they included like videos of a lot of the aspects, and that like showed that they're going to have a dedicated accessibility menu within the settings menu. I was like, these are all things that suggest they do want to take a step forward and
Yeah.
more
Totally.
seriously consider accessibility. And even if they're not necessarily where they're going to need to be for some people yet, it does make me go, if I say there are things that Nintendo could improve, I would love to see them improve. People aren't going to be able to just respond with, oh, it's Nintendo, they don't pay attention to accessibility anymore. It's like, no, no, no. They paid
They
attention.
do.
Now it's their job to listen to the feedback about how they're
Yeah.
doing it.
Exactly. Taking on, but like it's one thing to send. Because the thing is, it's one thing to have an accessible platform, but then having the accessible games is the other half of it.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious to see where that goes. But you're right in terms of it was good to see all that information appear on day and date with everybody else.
Yeah.
I mean, for those of you that follow me on socials, you may have seen. I was quite hyped about it as well. I was very much. This is a great thing to see because historically, I haven't felt very involved in the sort of Nintendo ecosystem or I haven't felt that I've been able to be very involved. But with that announcement of admittedly basic but useful screen reader implementation,
Yeah.
and as a shout out to what you said earlier, it's great to see a speed setting
Yeah.
be mentioned like really early on. Because
Yes.
for those of you that don't know, having screen readers speak like this for the entire time, you spend ages reading the user interface just to get information. And then it's like, now I'm going to tell you the information you need after 10 minutes of reading. I mean, that's
Yeah.
an exaggeration, but
It's
the
not
point
that much of an exaggeration. Like
it feels like 10 minutes, even if it isn't.
for anyone who's never listened to speed readers being run at the speed that people like you will listen to them at, it's probably 10 times that speed would still be a little on the slow estimate, I think.
I think that's one way to put it. I mean, I have a short on my YouTube channel, which might be linked in the descriptions
I'll make sure to do
of
so,
where
yeah.
this is, which shows the sort of approximation of this is where, like, this speed is where people think I read at. And then it's like, I put it up to roughly around what I generally use or somebody might be using, and it's much quicker. And that's the thing. It may not go up to the high enough speeds, but it's better than having it be one speed and that's it.
And it's an easier complaint to go, hey Nintendo, I'm glad that speed selection is here. Can you make the highest speed a higher speed? That's way easier than you didn't put speed controls in and we're asking for that to be added.
Exactly.
It shows at least a degree of awareness of the conversation. That again is like it suggests that they do want to be better. And it's good to have that feeling out of Nintendo. Even if like there's maybe going to be some it's going to be a little bit of a road to get them there. And even if I feel like Nintendo might be a little way from having their games necessarily be as accessible as they need to be, I do have hope for things like Xbox has talked a lot about wanting to get their games on Switch too, and there's some of those like Forza Motorsport that like it'd be great to see that get a port. Like if we start seeing, games that have that accessibility from other platforms ported to Switch 2, the fact that the user interface is to some degree navigatable without assistance is definitely a benefit if those ports start happening.
Exactly. Like, let's say hypothetically the store on the system isn't accessible.
Yeah.
It wouldn't entirely surprise me, at least at this early stage. Much like with the friends list and things like that,
Yeah.
there are various reasons why those are maybe harder to make work. I'm not going to try and justify those because I'm not aware of how the underlying tech works for the Switch 2. But let's say that the store isn't accessible. If you were to go instead to like the online eShop, which
Yeah.
I believe is
Yeah.
still a thing you can do,
It is, yeah.
If you were going to go onto there, let's say hypothetically Forza is a port, that you can go and
Yeah.
get. So you'd go on there, you'd grab Forza, you'd pay, and then somehow get it to prod and download it to your Switch too. That's fine, because
Yeah.
then if you can navigate to the home screen, you can then, in theory, find Forza, launch it, and the game would just be like, press X for accessibility settings, and then you're good. So
Yeah.
that I agree. There is a conversation to be had around the accessibility of games generally still, in
Yeah.
terms of the number of titles that are fully playable without assistance, including popular releases. But again,
Yeah.
probably a separate episode. I can think of several off the top of my head, including potentially future ones that I would love to play that might not be able to, depending on what happens. But the point being, if you give me accessible games on a platform, there is a high possibility I will go and play it on a platform. Like,
Yeah.
if I hadn't have got a code for Last of Us 2 to review on PC,
Yeah.
I would have probably still bought it and tried it out anyway.
Yeah.
Any number of other games could be said to be that as well. Like, I've bought multiple copies of games that are designed to be accessible on a few platforms over the years, not just to support the devs, but because I'm like, I want to play that again. That's cool.
Agreed. The number of times I've bought a thing on multiple platforms just because it's like, oh, I want to support that you did a thing that really helped me. Yeah, have my money more than once over. Wonderful.
Exactly. It's like, you deserve it. I want to show you and the industry that this is where I'm paying my money, because I can actually play your games.
Exactly.
So if Nintendo were to either have accessible games or port games that are accessible onto their platform, irrespective of whether it's their games or somebody else's, I will pay, or I will play. I will either pay or play or both on the platform. So yeah, there's definitely money there to be had. They've just got to take the opportunity. Like, I will give you my money, Nintendo, if you give me a reason to give me your money.
Perfectly put. So we've been going for about half an hour, and this is probably a good time to start wrapping up. Did you have any other things you wanted to say while we're here talking about Switch to accessibility?
I would say, I will definitely be keeping an eye on the discourse going forward to see what emerges out of that. Whether I do end up ordering a Switch 2 or not, I'm not sure, but we will see. I may await to hear from other people who've already ordered it out of their own sort of dedication to the brand, shall we say?
Well,
But
I've already made a note to let you know on launch day whether it boots with text-to-speech turned on by default, so you'll at least know that much.
Yeah, that's a good start, because then if it does, I will tell people. If it doesn't, I will also tell people, because then everybody else who gets a Switch 2 that I know will know either way, because that information should be public knowledge before launch.
Yes, it should.
So that then people who, like, that's the thing. If you're going to publish accessibility information on a platform, regardless of whether it's for the platform itself or an accessory or whatever it is, there needs to be information available where how to set it up, how to turn it on, where all the buttons are, what they do. So, like, the as a case in point, the Xbox wireless headset, I found the online manual for that while I was actually doing the review, and was able to set it up, figure it out, and I think even troubleshoot it at one point much later on, because I knew where the manual was. And I think I can't remember exactly how I'd done it, but I'd unintentionally, I think, bricked my headset slightly.
Oh.
So I had to sort of fully restart it. And I had no idea how to do that off the top of my head, because it's not necessarily a straightforward procedure. But whatever the case was, I ended up figuring out how to do it, got it to restart, and it worked. And that's all because the information is in a format that I can actually read without needing assistance to read it. So, whether you want people to know what your accessibility features are once you get things set up or not, whether even if you want people to know that, they should also be able to tell how to set it up in the first place, whether that's what all the ports are, what all the buttons do, what order you need to do things in, because sometimes there's orders you need to do things in, whether you can use keyboards and things to put Wi-Fi passwords in because touch screens are. Yeah, anyway, you get my point.
Yeah.
There's a lot of little things that go into this that make it viable when you're doing things without sighted assistance in terms of setting things up. So
Yeah.
it'd be good to see that. But I'm, as I say, cautiously optimistic to see what happens. This is a new chapter and arguably a new beginning for Nintendo. So I'm fascinated to see how this goes. But of course, with the caveat that having an accessible platform is one thing, having the platform be fully accessible is a second thing,
Yeah.
and having the games be accessible is just as important as the other two.
Wonderful. If people want to find more of the stuff you do, where can people find you on the internet?
Yep, so you can find me on socials as SightlessKombat. That is SightlessKombat. That's on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, Blue Sky, all of those things. But also, if you want to email RNIB and run any questions through there, you can email gaming@rnib.org.uk as well. And of course, if you type in RNIB DFEG, that is Design for Every Gamer, if you type that into your search engine of choice, you should also find a bunch of information there too.
Lovely. Thank you very much, everyone, for watching, and thank you very much for joining me on today's episode. We'll be back with more soon. Goodbye.
Thank you. Thank you.